You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Farce, flirtation, fidelity, and flannel in a Canuck-style Così fan tutte. Mozart's charming comic opera concludes Manitoba Opera's celebratory 50th anniversary season. And to hear more about it, I'm joined by two renowned individuals, no strangers to Manitoba Opera or to the audience. Director Rob Herriot and soprano Tracy Dahl. How lovely to see you both this morning.
Good morning.
It's awesome to be here. That intro was something else.
Oh, thanks, Rob.
I wondered where he was going with all the
exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're going to hear more about that in just a minute. But I want to begin with a little trip down memory lane with a little bit of nostalgia, which is one of those sentiments that just so often accompanies a big anniversary, like a 50th. Tracy, your first production, your operatic debut was with Manitoba Opera, right?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I was simultaneously doing side by Sondheim at the Warehouse Theatre for Manitoba Theatre Centre. And they were doing a school tour, and they needed people to audition. It was their first school tour. So I auditioned, and I got in singing Gilbert and Sullivan. I wasn't singing opera at that point. And they also gave me this little Barbarina part. And I had never sung with an orchestra like this before. And it was double cast. Yeah, Barbarina was double cast. Only part that was double cast. And Millie Hildebrandt, who is a very well-known choral conductor in the city, was the other. And she had two performances, and I had one. So I had the dress rehearsal and my one performance. And I'll never forget that first time singing on the stage with an orchestra in the hall. It was like a drug.
So this was back in 1982. And like you said, at the time, you were pursuing musical theater, right? And this was a sort of a gateway into the world of opera. And look where it's taken you since.
Clue.
You really didn't,
clue I was going that way. Not at all.
It is such an incredible story. And I mean, we all know where you went from there. I mean, singing it in renowned halls and on these grand stages. And I think what is so interesting here is that it kind of comes back to that first opportunity presented by Manitoba Opera and opportunity. There's some sort of branding thing there. But I think that's what's so interesting here is that you had that chance as a young performer to take the stage. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they've given that opportunity to so many young singers, right? Yeah,
I think it's so important that we find opportunities, and the city is actually blooming with opera opportunity now, actually, if you want to kind of paraphrase that or take a turn on that phrase, because we have given forth and given birth to lots of little opera companies from this large opera company, which is really wonderful and healthy for the community, and especially healthy for our young singers who then get a chance to try and sow their oats in a smaller place and then get back up on the big stage.
Rob, what about you? Do you remember your first Manitoba Opera gig? Was it as a director, or were you in a different role?
I was a super in Tosca in 1986, I want to say. And then I got into the chorus, and I did a few shows. And then 20 years ago this week, I did my first directing gig, and it was Lucia de Lammermoor with Guess Who.
Oh, perhaps someone in the room?
Yes. Yes. It was 20 years ago this week.
Know.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
20 years.
Wow.
2003. It's amazing. So, I came through the ranks.
Yeah, you came through the ranks as so many do. And I think that's, again, what is such a cool part of this story. And we heard about the Manitoba Opera Chorus Hall of Fame, the recently announced Hall of Fame. And there are many.
That's wonderful.
It really, really is. It's just such a great initiative. And so, again, I wanted to begin this conversation by talking a little bit about Manitoba Opera and each of the kind of careers that you've had with the organization, because it really is exactly that. So let's get to this actual production. And before we hear your take, Rob, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the opera itself, Tracy. Could you kind of give us a short synopsis of Così fan tutte?
Oh, I should leave that to Rob.
No.
It's a very small cast, 6 characters. The young couples, meet in the overture.
Yes.
And in this version, they are RCMP officers and 2 young ladies from Italy. And they immediately fall in love. Who doesn't fall in love with an RCMP officer? Despina works in the hotel, and Don Alfonso is one of the patrons who's there, shall we say, daily, nightly, and giving his advice. And so he advises the men to take on a bet, and he thinks that the women if they pretend to be someone else, that they will fall for them because that's the way women are, that they're fickle. And so he sets the bet up. Despina plays into the bet. The girls struggle with the bet. The girls fall for the bet. But we have a twist in this production, and I will leave that to Rob.
Rob, tell us more about your
Or not.
Well, can you tell us more about your take? I mean, of course, when this was originally set, it wasn't set with RCMP officers who then change into entirely different garb. Can you tell us more about how you've given this Canadian twist on things?
I was actually not responsible from the beginning. It was Sheldon Johnson, who is the production manager, and it designed both Cenerentola and Così, and came to me and said, I've got an idea and I'd like you to direct it. And he laid out the fact that it was going to be these two Mounties who fall in love with these girls visiting, and it was going to be set in this Banff Springs-like hotel. And so the story would happen within that context. And then when they go and they accept the challenge, they come back as two iconic Canadian figures who, and I won't give it away, but they were featured very strongly on CBC in short little vignettes. In the NFB.
I was going to say, I'm thinking NFB here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking NFB.
Yeah, you're thinking...
All right.
A very iconic little animated short. So they come back as those characters.
Well, very, very fun. And if people don't know to what we're alluding, they'll just have to go to the show at the Centennial Concert Hall. But if they do...
Flannel is a clue.
Yeah, flannel is certainly a cute clue. That was sort of my hope. You mentioned, Rob, your involvement with La Cenerentola, the previous major production in this 50th anniversary year. And just to go back to directing and working with Manitoba Opera, what's it like playing such a major role in this major anniversary? You're directing both of the productions, La Cenerentola, which was just fantastic and I so enjoyed, and then now Così fan tutte.
It's a real privilege. It's a pleasure. And I have to say that of all the companies I work for, I feel most at home. I feel very supported, and the resources are always there for me. Sheldon and I, in working together, he's usually, the boss, the guy who's sort of overseeing things, and now we're partners. And so it's been fascinating getting to know Sheldon, who's this very gentle, reserved fellow, who has burst into laughter on several occasions during this process, and it's just a joy for me to see him loving doing this. So the collaboration has been fantastic, and we've fed off each other, and the cast also fed off. I think we all fed off each other in the creating of the show.
If you're just tuning in, I'm chatting with Tracy Dahl and Rob Herriot, both very involved in the upcoming Manitoba Opera production of Così fan tutte, wonderful Mozart work, one of three Mozart da Ponte collaborations, the last of them, in fact, following Marriage of Figaro and Don Giovanni. And I have to say, this opera always makes me just a little bit anxious, just in terms of subject matter and the title alone, Così fan tutte. I mean, so do they all, but then using the feminine plural and then often translated as a woman are like that. But this is a work in which all the characters are manipulated, and you, Tracy, as Despina, do a lot of that manipulating. This just has to be an incredibly fun role to play.
It is. It's, I would say the last 15 years of my career have been doing a lot of ladies who die or are killed or something like that. So it's really fun to get back into doing the comic.
Yeah.
Side of the repertoire, and sometimes the comedy comes just from me, and sometimes it comes from maybe a wig, and that will define exactly what my movements will be like when I'm pretending to be someone else.
Yeah, and you get to pretend to be a lot of people, which I think adds to the hijinks that goes on throughout this entire production. It almost feels like this sort of like highly stylized 1790 rom-com at times too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all opera stretches our imagination. And if we believe that, if we think of farce as a play, also that stretches our imagination. So Così shouldn't be so hard to swallow when you think about it that way, that it is actually a farce and that we are... Despina really does play the foil to that whole story about she's the one who's saying, "Oh, come on, now we can behave like the guys. If the guys are going to be fickle, we can be fickle, or, you just have to learn how to lie." And that comes in handy at the end of the opera in this version.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, well, what a tease. I can't wait to be there and to see it. One last word on all of this. And Rob, I'm really curious because this really feels like Mozart at the height of his powers. I mean, it's 1790, a year before he dies, and all of his musical genius is really on display throughout this opera, isn't it?
I think it's definitely one of my favorite Mozart operas, up there with Figaro. There's something about this piece that's different. That's just different from the others in that it reaches a new height. It soars. The harmonies, the orchestration is so complex and playful, and it just sucks you in. So when I was approaching the piece, I approach opera from very much a musical point of view, that it has to say something to me. Usually when I hear a phrase of music or I listen to how a scene is composed, I know exactly the visual I will give it. And with Così, there were many, many times when I just went, well, that's how it's played.
Yeah.
So, and you can't go against it. You can't, if you try and be clever and reinvent the wheel, you are doing a disservice to what Mozart wrote. And so within that context, you have to take the material that you have and really let Mozart shine.
Yeah.
And I think these young singers that are playing the Four Lovers are doing such a fabulous job. And they're, aside from Jonathan, everybody is new to the company, I believe.
Absolutely.
So it's very exciting for people coming in because they're going to see new faces as well, which is really exciting, and stunning voices.
Stunning voices and actors.
Yeah, we always have to mention that part too, right? I mean, it's not a park and bark situation,
not this
right?
show.
And not in this show at all.
There's no, as Larry DeRoche said, he said, geez, we're going to have to supply extra calories. Because the finales are quite busy. But when it settles, like when Fiordiligi sings Per Pietà, it's like 7 minutes and she barely moves. But you're riveted to her. And the love duet, and you're riveted to her because she's living every single moment of that aria and struggling and struggling. It's, sometimes if you let singers, you don't impose too much on them and they're willing to go there.
Yeah.
They make magic.
Yeah.
And that's what we have in this cast.
Oh, well, so fantastic. I don't know what more we can say apart from it opens tomorrow, Saturday, at the Centennial Concert Hall, 7:30 p.m. Second performance on Tuesday the 25th, concluding on the 28th. Tickets available at mbopera.ca. We've also got all the details up at classic107.com. Rob, Tracy, thanks for joining me this morning.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. It was great to be here.